a nuestro simposio para el desarrollo sostenible. The project to create a cyclotron in the Greater Caribbean is an excellent example of a mega project for the region, which will promote and in fact has already promoted at this initial stage greater regional integration and will require international support for its realization. Our countries not feel the need to use cyclotron light because they have not had until now. The day this changes, there will be other irreversible changes in our industries, in our hospitals, in our agriculture. Vamos a tener esta semana el evento en varias sedes. Comenzamos hoy en Colombia, aquí en la ciudad de Montería, en la Universidad de Córdoba. Luego, mañana, vamos para Jamaica, en la Facultad, the Faculty of Science and Technology in Kingston, in Jamaica. The local coordinator there is Dr. Marvedine Singh Wilmot from the Faculty of Science and Technology. After that, we are going to have the meeting May 31 in the Universidad Politécnica de Valencia. The local coordinators there is Dr. Juan Ángel Sanz Treserras and Dr. Pedro José Fernández de Córdoba Castela from the Universidad Politécnica de Valencia. After that, in June 1st, in the Centro Académico Cultural Campus UNAM Juriquilla, Querétaro, and the local coordinator there is Dr. Víctor Castaño. After that, in June 2, the 2nd of June, in the auditorio of the Torre Futura, Colonia Escalón in San Salvador, and the local coordinator there is Dr. Carlos Rudamas from the University of Salvador and Dr. Alejandro Alvarado from the Republic Presidency of the El Salvador. And after that, we are going to have the event in the Dominican Republic. So now we are going to introduce the vicerrector de Investigación y Extensión de la Universidad de Córdoba, Dr. Davis Enrique Luján Renals. Es un grato placer que estés acá.
Buen día para todos. Un cordial saludo a el doctor Franklin García Fermín, ministro de Educación Superior, Ciencia y Tecnología de la República Dominicana, al doctor Genaro Rodríguez Martínez, viceministro de Educación Superior, Ciencia y Tecnología de la República Dominicana, doctora Andrea del Pilar Sánchez Chávez, representación del Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación de Colombia. Conferencistas, panelistas, demás representantes de otras naciones e instituciones públicas o privadas, profesores, estudiantes, señoras y señores. Un saludo especial como agradecimiento por la invitación para los profesores coordinadores de este evento, doctores Camilo Delgado y Hernán Garrido. Para la Universidad de Córdoba, en representación de Colombia, es un gran honor ser el anfitrión de este simposio multi-sede, la amistad, la creación de un sincrotrón en el Gran Caribe, el cual logra congregar a científicos de países amigos como España, México, República Dominicana, El Salvador, Jamaica y Colombia, a partir del cual se busca como propósito la justificación de la creación de un sincrotrón para la región del Gran Caribe y mostrar las aplicaciones de un sincrotrón en el marco de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Sin duda alguna, la ciencia, tecnología, innovación y desarrollo en la mayoría de nuestros países aún tiene mucho camino por explorar. Las limitaciones económicas, políticas y hasta culturales muchas veces ralentizan los deseos ambiciosos de transformación positiva dispuestos por nuestros científicos más destacados. Claramente estamos distantes de los avances logrados en esta materia por parte de aquellos países que hace mucho tiempo le apostaron a la ciencia como motor del desarrollo, paz y bienestar. Pero nunca es tarde. Ya estamos enrutados hacia la autopista de los electrones que conducen a la velocidad de la luz para llegar tan lejos como nuestra imaginación nos lo permita. Este evento representa un inmenso paso en la constitución de alianzas estratégicas que permitirán en el mediano plazo la construcción de esta poderosa herramienta de última tecnología que facilitará y nos acercará aún más en las respuestas a muchas preguntas aplicadas en múltiples ciencias, pasando por la nanotecnología, la física, la química, biología, biotecnología, alimentos, medicinas y demás aplicaciones. Todas ellas generan un gran impacto en el bienestar de la población. Se trata de un gran laboratorio múltiple que servirá también de unión entre nuestros países hermanos. Nos permitirá romper barreras en la ciencia antes inexploradas en torno a materiales autóctonos y su comportamiento ante efectos controlados. Aunque Brasil ya cuenta con un sincrotrón desde el año 2018, sería una ventaja mayor contar con uno de habla hispana y con tecnología más actualizada, de tal forma que podamos explorar de recóndito mundo microscópico y molecular de nuestra poderosa naturaleza del Gran Caribe. Contar con un sincrotrón en nuestra vecindad es estar a la vanguardia del ritmo de la ciencia en otras latitudes. Es acercarnos más al futuro próspero a partir del entendimiento de la estructura de la materia. Deseamos que este importante evento sea todo un éxito y esté lleno de mucha luz que ilumine el sendero de la nueva ciencia en nuestros países. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos.
Muchas gracias, doctor Davis. Qué buen discurso. Sobre todo esa parte del Gran Caribe. Creo que lo necesitamos y por eso estamos aquí en Montería. Es decir, el evento de Colombia se realiza aquí en Montería. Es algo muy importante de decir, ¿no? Para unirnos a esta gran iniciativa. Ahora me gustaría invitar a la doctora Jennifer Judith Lafont Mendoza, decana de la Facultad de Ciencias Básicas de la Universidad de Córdoba.
Buenos días. Apreciado doctor Jairo Torres Oviedo, rector de la Universidad de Córdoba. Doctor Davis Luján, vicerrector de Investigación y Extensión de la Universidad de Córdoba. Doctor Franklin García Fermín, ministro de Educación Superior, Ciencia, Tecnología de la República Dominicana. Doctor Genaro Rodríguez Martínez, viceministro de Educación Superior en Ciencia y Tecnología de la República Dominicana. Doctora Andrea del Pilar Sánchez Chávez, representante del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación de Colombia. Estimado comité organizador, en cabeza de los doctores Camilo y Hernán. Señores administrativos, investigadores invitados, profesores, estudiantes, miembros del comité organizador y demás público en general. Reciban un cordial saludo de bienvenida al evento Simposio a la Amistad, Sincrotrón para el Desarrollo Sostenible de Colombia, el cual es un proyecto colaborativo que reúne al Gran Caribe, el cual incluye los países de Colombia, República Dominicana, Jamaica, México, El Salvador, con Europa. Este simposio es una oportunidad más para que la Facultad de Ciencias Básicas de la Universidad de Córdoba, a través del Programa de Física, pueda vincularse en un proyecto internacional con gran impacto para producir energía limpia para los países del Caribe, con un gran impacto positivo en el desarrollo sostenible de la región. Este ejercicio académico-científico permite integrar la formación del recurso humano con la investigación, produciendo conocimiento con validez científica y pertinencia social. Además, favorece la formación de una actitud crítica en nuestros estudiantes para resolver problemas, analizar diversas formas de abordarlos y encontrar la solución más efectiva. Esperamos que este encuentro académico-científico fortalezca los lazos interinstitucionales y de aquí surjan muchas ideas que se puedan concretar en diversos trabajos colaborativos. Desde la Decanatura de la Facultad de Ciencias Básicas, damos la bienvenida a este importante evento, en especial a todos los expositores internacionales y nacionales invitados. Esperamos poder compartir experiencias de sus grupos de investigación con los nuestros en Colombia. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora Jennifer, y que sí, que sea parte de esa primera piedra, ¿no?, que vamos colocando en cada uno de estos países para poder sacar este proyecto adelante. Yo hace poco le decía a la doctora Jennifer que más que una carrera de 100 metros, esto es una maratón, pero vamos a hacerlo. Bueno, ahora me gustaría invitar al profesor Galileo Violini. Él es profesor emérito de física, es co-creador del Centro Internacional de Física, incluso ha recibido pues, premios de la Sociedad Norteamericana de Física. So I would like to invite Galileo Violini to talk here. He's stay online, so he's going to join us soon. Mientras Leo se conecta. No, pues yo quería como hablar antes algo del proyecto. Estamos hablando que hay todo un equipo de personas detrás de cada uno de los simposios y queremos promover lo que es una sociedad basada en el conocimiento. Estos megaproyectos científicos, el 99% de su construcción lo hace ingenieros. Es decir, que movemos diferentes sectores. No solamente es el target científico, sino luego todas las aplicaciones que tiene. Y una máquina como el Sincrotrón, ustedes van a ver más adelante que tiene aplicaciones médicas, aplicaciones en estudio de materiales. Pues no les quiero adelantar un poco lo que viene en las conferencias, pero no solamente es el desarrollo de la investigación básica, sino también cómo eso lleva a generar productos y articulación con la ingeniería y la articulación con la sociedad, ¿sí? Para generar, al final, resolver necesidades sociales. Entonces, es muy importante que en países como Colombia y de la región tengamos ese tipo de proyectos de alta envergadura. Eso mueve la economía. Muchos países que llamamos ricos se han hecho ricos usando la ciencia y nosotros todavía no hemos usado esa herramienta, ¿no? Entonces, este tipo de proyectos lleva a eso, a ponernos en un lugar donde nuestra economía sea basada en conocimiento. So now, I would like to, no, esperemos un segundo. Ya se va a conectar Galileo Bellini. Bueno, no, entonces mientras llega Leo, porque voy a darle la bienvenida a Andrea Sánchez, que es representante del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación de la República de Colombia en temas de ciencias básicas y el espacio. Bienvenida, Andrea.
Bueno, buenos días a todos los asistentes y las personas que nos acompañan de manera virtual, a la Universidad de Córdoba por esta bienvenida y por abrir este espacio para la investigación. En nombre del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación y de nuestra ministra, la doctora Yesenia Olaya Requene, es un gusto para mí en Ciencias participar y aceptar esta invitación que promueve el desarrollo sostenible a través de la iniciativa Sincrotrón para Centroamérica y el Caribe. Cuando hablamos de la importancia de potenciar las ciencias básicas y del espacio, vale la pena destacar la misión de Sabios, que dedica un capítulo especial para llamar la atención sobre este foco, destacando que su desarrollo en un país depende directamente de la formación de los ciudadanos desde su primera infancia hasta la educación superior, así como de las acciones concretas para promover la investigación guiada por la curiosidad, que responda a los interrogantes de la humanidad, a la creación de empresas con un alto valor agregado a partir de estos campos de conocimiento, ofreciendo una interesante mirada a las oportunidades que Colombia tiene para participar en la actual revolución cuántica. Y a realizar propuestas en temas prioritarios como el medio ambiente, la biodiversidad, el uso de la ciencia, la tecnología y la innovación para mejorar la apropiación, la transferencia de conocimiento hacia la sociedad. Es clave entonces invertir en investigación en ciencias básicas teniendo en cuenta su impacto no solo en el ámbito científico, sino en la sociedad, pues genera conocimiento y el conocimiento genera confianza en la toma de decisiones informadas, no solo en ciencia y tecnología, sino también en otros aspectos técnicos de la vida colectiva para la solución de problemáticas de la sociedad, que además tiene un impacto en el individuo, pues para el ser humano, naturalmente curioso, que le interesa explorar el mundo, los programas de ciencias básicas contribuyen a la formación de habilidades y competencias científicas que abren posibilidades para investigar en el país, participando en su desarrollo y crecimiento. Por otra parte, un científico bien formado en matemáticas, física, química o biología sabe pensar de manera racional. Con pensamiento crítico, sabe cómo estructurar las preguntas más apropiadas para resolver los problemas más complejos, lo que impacta no solamente a la ciencia, sino a muchos otros y amplios sectores de la actividad social. Las mejores decisiones, las mejores políticas de Estado son aquellas tomadas por los ciudadanos bien informados, entrenados en el ejercicio de su racionalidad y que tienen una gran cultura hacia la ciencia. Por lo tanto, la inversión en ciencias básicas no es un privilegio que los países desarrollados se ganaron gracias a su dominio económico. Por el contrario, fue precisamente el desarrollo de estas ciencias lo que les permitió a esos países llegar a posiciones de liderazgo. La historia evidencia cómo los países desarrollados son aquellos que han hecho una gran inversión en investigación científica. Es evidente que no puede haber desarrollos tecnológicos que beneficien a la sociedad, a los seres vivos o al planeta sin avances en ciencias básicas que lo soporten, y las brechas en la inversión en ciencias necesariamente generan un atraso en el desarrollo tecnológico. Las ciencias construyen entonces en las sociedades un potencial de respuesta y una capacidad para resolver nuevos problemas. Aunque los beneficios económicos en ciencias básicas no parezcan evidentes en un principio, se revelan como muy obvios cuando surgen aplicaciones tecnológicas, los inventos y las innovaciones derivadas de ellos. La generación de conocimiento no solo ha promovido enormes empresas económicas, sino también produce bienestar y salud en la gente. La especie humana ha logrado llegar al grado de civilización actual gracias a la comprensión de la mecánica cuántica, la termodinámica, el electromagnetismo y más recientemente la mecánica cuántica. Y en un mundo que ha llegado a los 7.000 millones de habitantes que deben ser bien alimentados, solo la agricultura basada en el conocimiento e investigación científica puede estar a la altura de este reto. Países como China, Corea del Sur y Singapur invirtieron masivamente en investigación y desarrollo, y al comienzo muy particularmente en ciencias básicas, y se han beneficiado inmensamente de este esfuerzo que en pocos años las llevó a multiplicar varias veces el ingreso per cápita de sus ciudadanos. Por lo tanto, para crear riqueza y bienestar y para desarrollar su economía, un país debe ser capaz de crear nuevas industrias, nuevos aparatos. Para construir nuevos artefactos, el país debe tener entonces inventores que desarrollen los descubrimientos en ciencias básicas. No es posible tener tecnología e innovación sin una base sólida de conocimiento. La calidad de nuestra educación depende en gran medida de la calidad de nuestra investigación científica, y no es posible ser parte de un mundo global sin contribuir con sus desarrollos. Iniciativas como el proyecto Sincrotrón, además de su valor científico y social, al ser un proyecto colaborativo que reúne países de Centroamérica y el Caribe como República Dominicana, México, El Salvador, Jamaica, España y Colombia, es una evidencia de que la ciencia es un dominio en el que la gente puede colaborar a través de las fronteras, compartiendo los mismos valores, trabajando por los mismos objetivos, incluso con orientaciones políticas diferentes. La ciencia es entonces un patrimonio de la humanidad al cual no podemos renunciar y al que no podemos negarle nuestra participación. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Andrea, y es muy importante que estés acá en representación del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación, que es toda una apuesta de país. Es uno de los ministerios más jóvenes, pero con grandes aspiraciones, y lo que les decía antes, la ciencia es motor de la ingeniería y la ingeniería a su vez es motor de la sociedad. Entonces hay una conexión que nos lleva incluso a hablar de uno de los programas actuales de gobierno, que es Ciencia para la Paz. Entonces, esto me hace acordar de una anécdota. Una vez haciendo una charla de divulgación de astronomía en una zona rural de Bogotá que se llama Sumapaz, y una niña me decía de 12 años, me decía, es que yo quiero ser científica. Y entonces uno como científico dice, ¿qué hago? Y ahí es donde el ministerio, ¿cierto? La articulación con la industria, con la academia, la sociedad civil, los académicos, pues debemos unirnos para también darle ese futuro a todas esas personas que aman la ciencia y que viven por ella. Entonces estos proyectos como el Sincrotrón, lo que les decía antes de esa conexión de generarnos riqueza económica, pero también hay una riqueza cultural detrás. Y con esto me gustaría dar la bienvenida al doctor Galileo Violini.
Può essere completamente corroborata nel pensamento al settore medicale, perché il Simposio è sembrata la Ciencias, una sigla obligada, científicos activos con investigación. En este mismo maratón, hace 2 años, usted en el ministro apoyó la decisión de un simposio sobre la recuperación post-pandemia de la ciencia latinoamericana. Y el año pasado, el punto sobre los necesidades científicas para el desarrollo científico económico, y el mismo que ya tenía en el trasfondo non si può che se vogliate girare y comienza la respuesta que realmente hanno questo di tamaño infinito. ¿Por qué un sincrotrón en esta región? Existe la capacidad de multiplicar. ¿Dónde puede estar localizado? ¿Qué papel jugará los demás países? ¿En qué manera el proyecto podrá contar con una cooperación internacional? ¿Y qué beneficio? No solo el desarrollo científico se ha de esperar. No pretendo, en esta breve introducción, adelantar cuál puede ser el resultado de esta sesión y las otras 5 documentales a esto. En los 2 días se desarrolla una máquina médico, el sector experimental. Aprovecho para recordar al anciano no solo Cristo, sí, Quando si viene a funzionare, si vede una storia di e quindi si supera una delle sbagliate che si guardate sono dei cross. Il dare superiore è dei cross per l'uomo. I contenuti alcanzati si smettono del salotto superiore che seconda se a menudo permetta la soddisfazione del sistema. Básicas, giustizia e valore sociale. Lo conferma dell'entusiasmo proprio destacando tutto le scientifici internazionales. Entre los que como el Parisi había aceptado participar en un panel de presentación y discusión sul campo profesionale. Il panel hubiera tenido su actual creación en la sesión de clausura de las ciencias dominicanas. Comisión de los sindicatos había asistido con generosidad, dada como es la área en que no creas. Lamentablemente, en la parte de los familiares, decidimos la noticia que el texto no va a ser posible. En este momento, nuestra organización inicial de la opción del control de los errores por formulado. En cualquier caso, se mostrará conveniente en la página web del Simposio. La consideración que está en general es un eje del programa de este año. Quiero insistir que no debe tener las palabras biográficas. En el simposio del año pasado, hubo una mesa sobre la posibilidad de conversación entre mujer y este lector. Estamos proponiendo algo bien mañana, por lo que podría resultar como presente del sector público. De análisis y el resto del mundo humano. Así, el proyecto de Sincrotrón en esta región se está desarrollando con estrecha colaboración con el africano. Gran variedad de los documentales son pleno presente de ello. La iniciativa de esta naturaleza son necesarias. Y no me refiero solamente al simposio, sino a la creación de grandes infraestructuras serias. El último enfoque de la carrera para un desarrollo más inteligente. Pero podemos afirmar que está creciendo en su continente del mundo. Es 0,6% del producto. En un país de región, hace 300 años, la inflación solo del 0,04%. Hablar de carrera por el tiempo parece un chiste cruel. Cuando esos amigos reales vemos un desencuentros. Más que la carrera, pues, así que, claro, en la cual en su clase interno y no tiene que centrarse en esta competición. Si ustedes estén imaginativos de la practicación interna de no usaba las actas de Ciencias, solo ciencia la que como solamente algunos resultados publicados. Las grandes eso no es aprendizaje. Son actividades que nos casi una vez. Y la inversión es casi un solo. Y luego, la relación al pasado, la inversión a la ciencia. No hay libertad a los países que no participen del desarrollo científico y las consecuencias de esto ya es más difícil sacar un pueblo de la certidumbre que su lugar político. Pero la ciencia se hace, aunque le veo no la mentira usted, le veo la más clara que es el lugar. Entonces, si se quiere aprovechar la visión de la excelente actual comunalmente, hay que fortalecer la populación regional. Y esto se va a aplicar con general desde el simposio, independientemente de sus proyectos institucionales. Se tiene claves y muchas aplicaciones. Y se ve muy sí, muy increíble. Sigue son esenciales, no solamente la ciencia, sino para este medio creación. Esta situación sugiere los maestros psicológicos nacional. Aunque no se resolvió acciones sobre esta reforma. Sí es cierto, y no tengo duda respecto de la ciencia y del público, su definición por su ejercicio. Patriarca o global, no es libre. La adaptación de constituciones constitucionales. Pero por ello, como que hago, como que hago, y no he perdido de hecho, se da la posibilidad de hacer cosas. El proyecto de estructura de lugares, el proyecto vino el páramo de los pretextos de formar como de acusar, emplear, también y decir. El colectivo por la sensibilidad andina para la parte de ser en presencia de la escritura representada en de ciencias. Sistema de a las fases de recientemente no digo que se de sino la igualdad del tanto de los Sincrotrón imputada en la alcance del web. A nivel general, el simposio de la sociedad solamente como el meta o concierto en tiempo futuro entregado e indefinido. Mañana somos y entonces toda la opinión las comunidades como sí, hay que recomendar la organización de ese sueño al menos para las ciencias. Anche di conquistare l'astro.
Hola, Leo. Ok. À Télédétection spatiale Université Pédagogique Nationale, Kinshasa, République Démocratique du Congo. And the title is Synchrotron as Sustainable Energy Source for African Countries. Dr. Jean-Pierre Mufamba Mulumba is currently employed as an associate professor, as I told before. He has a master's degree in environmental science at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, South Africa, and a PhD in atmospheric physics at the School of Chemistry and Physics from the same university. He worked as air quality researcher at UKSN, at SRK Consulting in Durban, and as air quality consultant at Umoyanilu Consulting, after being an atmospheric science lecturer at level 3 for undergrads at the same university. He is a meteorologist by formation and has more than 12 years of experience in air quality monitoring and modeling, data processing, and air quality management and modeling. He is part of the dynamic consulting team that led the draft of the National Framework for Air Quality Management in South Africa. He has contributed to a few baseline assessment reports on air quality management in mining and refinery companies in South Africa, Congo, Uganda, and Nigeria. He's author of several journal papers based on climate change, anthropospheric ozone, and air quality reviews at international level. Okay, so now tenemos el discurso de el ministro de Educación Superior, Ciencia y Tecnología de la República Dominicana, el doctor Franklin García Fermín.
Un placer para todos, mi más grato saludo. Me place participar junto a ustedes en el Congreso Internacional de Investigación Científica. El Ministerio de Educación Superior, Ciencias y Tecnología de la República Dominicana organiza para difundir los resultados producidos por los científicos de nuestra región, el cual llega este año a la mayoría de edad y vuelve a ser presencial después de la emergencia de la pandemia. Es el evento estrella de un denso programa que se va desarrollando durante una semana entera, la Semana de la Ciencia Dominicana, la cual discurre entre el 5 y el 11 de junio, y cuyo evento principal es el Congreso Internacional de Investigación Científica, 7 al 9 de junio. Cuando hace 3 años tuve el honor de asumir la responsabilidad de dirigir el ministerio, recibí la propuesta de incluir en el programa un simposio de política científica cuyo interés trascendiera nuestros programas nacionales. Ese año el tema fue la recuperación de la ciencia latinoamericana cuando terminara la pandemia de la COVID-19. Iniciativa que tuvo seguimiento el año pasado cuando se analizó el impacto de grandes proyectos de infraestructura científica para los nuestro desarrollo científico y para el alcance de las metas del desarrollo sostenible. El tema del simposio de este año tiene un nexo natural con el del año pasado. Entre las grandes infraestructuras científicas, los sincrotrones, gracias a la versatilidad de sus aplicaciones y por los grandes progresos tecnológicos, tienen inigualables aplicaciones relevantes para la 13 de los 17 objetivos del desarrollo sostenible. Sin embargo, hay grandes desigualdades en el desarrollo tecnocientífico. En Asia las hay en un amplio conjunto de países que no se limita a los más poblados y desarrollados, mientras en África no las hay. Y en nuestro continente, fuera de Estados Unidos y Canadá, hay únicamente el caso de Campina, en Brasil, cuyo director, el doctor Harry Westphal, participará en una de las sesiones de este simposio. El estancamiento de propuestas nacionales tendientes a superar esta desigualdad muestra la necesidad de una colaboración entre nuestros países y de un fuerte apoyo internacional. El caso de Sésame, el Sincrotrón, creado en Jordania hace 20 años con el apoyo de la UNESCO, a pesar de aparentemente insuperables dificultades geopolíticas, confirma que es una meta posible y enseña la ruta que hay que seguir para un programa de formación del personal y de ampliación de posibles usuarios. Proyectos de esta naturaleza tienen su justificación principal en el desarrollo social y económico que catalizan, pero no hay que olvidar unos resultados intangibles y no específicos del proyecto. El crecimiento de la comunidad científica, su mayor autonomía respecto al primer mundo, pasando de ser colaboradores de grupos del primer mundo a ser colaboradores con ellos. Una mayor integración regional, la posibilidad de que surjan nuevas colaboraciones interdisciplinares, son algunos ejemplos. Una novedad interesante ya es ofrecida por este simposio en lo concerniente a las formas de cooperación. El formato de un evento de esta naturaleza que se realiza en 6 países posiblemente sea la primera vez que se utiliza y pueda resultar de gran utilidad para el desarrollo de iniciativas concretas de cooperación futura. Agradezco a los organizadores de las sesiones de este evento por su labor que ha hecho posible su realización. En su mayoría son miembros del comité ejecutivo de la iniciativa Luz de Sincrotrón en el Gran Caribe y les deseo éxito en esta y en las otras iniciativas de promoción de este proyecto. Muchas gracias y les deseo, reitero, el mayor de los éxitos. Gracias. Excelente.
Un saludo. Y seguimos con nuestro programa. And now I would like to invite to the Dr. Jean-Pierre Mufamba Mulumba, Associate Professor at the École de Télécommunication at Télédétection Spatiale, Université Pédagogique Nationale, UPN, Kinshasa, Republic Democratic du Congo. The title is Sincrotrón, a Sustainable Energy Source for African Countries. Welcome, Jean-Pierre.
So thank you very much for hearing me this morning in Colombia. It's 4 o'clock here in Kinshasa, in Congo, Democratic Congo. Right. We are going to talk about Sincrotrón as a new energy source for African countries. Before getting into the matter, let us make some analysis on what's happening with energy issue in Africa. Energy market has experienced significant disruption since the outbreak of COVID-19. In the late 2021, natural gas prices triggered a new crisis, leading to risks for energy supply shortages worldwide and propelling the issue of energy security to the forefront. And Africa will not be spared. The persecution of this crisis, which would further increase energy inequality, which in turn to turn to other forms of inequality. Well, Africa has very big problem of energy, as I'm going to show you. Although these energy problems exist, and some crisis is caused by several conditions or parameters. The very first one is the inflation. Africa doesn't have a strong currency to sustain the ongoing prices of energy. There is no greater interconnection of natural or hydropower market. Although Africa is a big hydropower source with big rivers and so on. The lack of reliable and affordable energy for supply and production, the linking moves of fossil fuels to sustainable energy as renewable energy, even several driving forces impeding this industry. So these challenges have come to a need for the transition of energy transition.
Jean-Pierre?
Yes.
Yes. Could you present your talk, because we are not seeing your slides?
We don't see the slides. Hello.
Hello. Yes. You can share your screen to present the slides.
Okay. You cannot see the slide.
No.
Oh, goodness me. I don't know.
You need to share your screen.
Okay. Can you see the
yes.
now?
Yes.
All right. Okay, let me restart a bit. I was saying that there is some causes of energy crisis in Africa, given that some economical problems, supply, and lack of connection between sources of energies and so on and so forth. And thereof, Africa has, and more especially sub-Saharan Africa, has so many sources of energy. But until, as you can see on the slide, these sources are not fully exploited. Let us take like for natural gas. They have 12% for natural gas. And the coal is used for 15%. Biofuel is used for 47%. And oil is used for 12%. And hydro only 1.3% of use. The nuclear 0.5. And if you can see in 2010, the need for energy in Africa was like for 27% in urban areas. And it has increased to 44. It will be increasing to 44 in 2030, which means that this is in urban area. In rural area, we have like for 2020 statistics showing 47, which is increased to 51 is the word for the energy need. So, which means that Africa has the potential energy and renewable energy, as you can see from the slide. We have all kinds of sources of renewable energy, but they are not used to their potential. Why? Because of some economical, some political issues, and so on, technological issues also. So, because of that, and also you must notice that Africa is the big hydropower, has a big hydropower potential, with almost 21,000 megawatt production, that's power production. But this power, as you can see, is not really exploited. So Africa, and more especially Southern Africa, still having a very big problem of interconnection for energy supply and energy production. And this map shows you how the power from the DRC Congo, from Inga Dam, can be shared for supplying energy all over Southern Africa. But this is just a will. It is not effective. You see, this card, I mean, this map shows you what should be, but up until now, this has not become true. And then you can see now the need of African energy statistics. As you can see from the year 24 up to year 2012, the need for energy in Africa has increased. And we're standing up to actually 18% for electricity, and the production is only 10%. So this shows that really Africa has a very big problem of energy supply. And then the crisis of energy in sub-Saharan Africa, as I said, it comes from the supply. There is no supply chain given to a very big demand. Since the event of COVID-29, there has been a very big disruption. So these factors have made Africa to look at how to boost up energy supply, trying to get into energy transition. That is why when you look at the need of African energy, we have noticed that Synchrotron and put African demand on energy for so many applications. Is characteristic the source of radiation. High energy and proton flux, continuous covering growing from far infrared to hard X-ray, small every radiance, also determined mainly by the economic dimension, high brightness, and hence high social coherence resulting from the combination of small sources, size and divergence, polarization of light linear and orbit plane with the circular components above and below the orbit plane. All these characteristics of synchrotron energy can have the advantage of being a wide and application cover for the whole range of basic and applied science. And also it can include industrial like lithography and micromechanics and medical application use. And then the source, synchrotron as the source of energy has this facility of being tuned through various wavelengths that can be used for application in science. So this is characteristics of some sort of the synchrotron, as we can show it with the primary figure here. And also some characteristics also can be used for different applications given the energy, the momentum, the position, the dynamics, and so on and so forth. So the quantum energy, as we can see with the characteristics, can actually be used to supply energy in Southern Africa, where energy problem is actually experienced. Not only for that, but also to try to help fighting climate change effects, as we can see that taking place in different ways. In conclusion, we can say this: although South Africa is endorsed with enormous renewable energy potential, which is and we have shown it about. Now, since the hydropower, almost 20,000, with 21,000 megawatts that can be produced, constitute a clean and reliable energy in Africa, we have the impression we have imperial obligations to maximize its production and the distribution in order to satisfy increasing demand for therefore meeting the Millennium Development Goals. But this is a will, as people as African countries have been struggling to get funding to manage the hydropower energy and to add solar and so on, but this never worked. At this time, we also know that synchrotron energy can be a solution through its characteristics, can be a solution for sustainable and affordable energy sources for sub-Saharan African countries with a bid to decrease issues of fossil energy use and effect on climate change. This new technology is not known really in Africa. It needs to be implemented with immediate effect. And in all Africa, and more especially in Southern Africa in particular. Having said that, I thank you. Hello?
Hi. I can hear you, Jean-Pierre. I don't know about the rest.
I can also hear Jean-Pierre.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
Also, because the implementation of this because economic, political, social issues. The network that is a very high way far important quickly. It's a new technology not known and we get the will of making it being implemented through bilateral cooperation or multilateral cooperation.
Very interesting. But I think we've lost our Colombian connection again for some reason. Carolina Santa Cruz, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning. Good morning in Colombia.
How are you? Hey, I don't know. We keep losing our connection to the central.
Yes. It is a pity so much technical issues during the meeting.
Yeah.
But I don't have connection with them through WhatsApp. I mean, with the technical team.
I am speaking to them, Carolina.
Okay, Mervadine. Good luck with that.
Okay, so let's wait a bit. I these are the troubles of us in the developing world, I guess.
Okay, we'll wait. Thank you.
Too many problems, technical problems. Hello, Carolina.
Good morning. How are you? My pleasure to greet you.
I'm fine, thank you. You're speaking to Jean-Pierre.
Yes, Jean-Pierre. Yeah, congratulations on your words.
Yeah, thank you so much. I tried, but this is a very new science. It's not really known in Africa.
Okay, guys, excuse me a moment, Jean-Pierre. So I just got word, and they're asking us for 2 minutes.
All right.
They're working on it. So let's continue the discussion here among ourselves.
Okay.
I hear you a bit hard, Jean-Pierre.
But I did not understand, Jean-Pierre, how you would produce the energy from the synchrotron.
You didn't know how to use it.
No, I don't understand how you extract energy from the synchrotron to do what you are proposing.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that synchrotron energy is a new technology of using particulates to produce energy from the synchrotron. It's a machine. It's a machine that's producing a kind of energy that can be tuned to different length waves. So, as such, it can be used for light, to produce light. A synchrotron can be used also to do some application on X-ray, on mechanics, on medicine, using different range of wavelength of energy wavelength. So that's what I can say for now.
Because I've seen the synchrotron would be used to study, for instance, materials that you would use in solar cells and things of that nature. So it has many energy applications to energy storage, for instance.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So I see. Okay, that's what you mean. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes. As you know that Africa is experiencing energy problem, a huge energy problem, struggling from finding and so on and so forth. But this synchrotron, I don't think it's going to be needing more investment like it should be for energy hydropower investment or nuclear energy investment or solar power power in investment. That's why I'm suggesting it can be used by different users, like hospitals, like universities, and so on. So that will be disconnected from the national or the international grid, and saving electricity and trying to boost up the sustainable development.
Jean-Pierre, my question is, how widespread is the research that's going on into materials that can be used in finding alternative sources of energy, like new battery technologies, solar cells, wind, hydrogen? How widespread is that research in Africa right now?
Thank you so much. Actually, Africa, please note that I've just been in the Congo for only a few months now. I've been in South Africa for almost 22 years. But South Africa is not to be compared to all other African countries, sub-Saharan countries, because South Africa is a very quite developed country with a high technology and so on and so forth. My experience here in the DRC is that Sincrotrón itself, it's not really studied. It has been studied at university in physics, theoretically. But today, with the discovery of many minerals, like nickel, like coltan, like cobalt, like I forgot another one. The one that's making the batteries they are using for making batteries. The DRC actually is a big producing country in terms of those minerals. So research are still really at the beginning. I'm actually trying to get into that with some of my colleagues from other universities. And remember, this is the very first time that this kind of presentation has been made on international stage. But I'm struggling to make other colleagues, physics physicians, to try come together and see the possibility of us meeting all our knowledge together and try to find out a way of just boosting this technology. We have all necessary materials for the application of this technology, but we have to sit together and work on it so that we can really try to make it work.
Thank you.
So any response, Marvadine, from the organizers?
Okay, there's a message that just came in. Carolina may be able to help us with the translation. It says, Carolina, are you hearing? Sakazi, you speak Spanish?
I do.
Okay, it says, ya volvimos, and then no hay problema, podemos seguir, S-E-G-U-I-R.
Yes, following. They are asking if we can follow. I mean, if we are hearing already, so we can continue with the meeting. But I just wrote on the webinar chat. The thing is, it seems like we have a different connection from them.
Right. I told them that we are talking among ourselves, but they are not here. Let me say that.
Or if you want, you can share with me the WhatsApp, the WhatsApp number, so I can call them.
Yeah, let me do that, Caroline.
Thank you.
Sorry,
I'm gonna put it in the general group for you here, Carolina.
It's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm going to stop the sharing. Okay.
Yes, I think you can stop sharing.
Okay.
which has played a crucial role in the development of intense particle accelerator, including Synchrotron light sources. He co-founded approximately 18 domestic and international organizations, including the African Physical Society, African Light Source Foundation, African Laser Center, Julius Nyerere University of Agriculture and Technology in Tanzania, and LAMP, with enhanced synchrotron light source and crystallographic science in developed countries. He recently served as chair of the IPAP C13 Commission on Physics for Development. He is recipient of the American Association for the Advancement of Science 2023 Philip H. Abelson Prize for his many contributions to scientific research and policy, the inaugural International Science Council 2021 Policy for Science Award, the American Physical Society's 2017. Yes. Can you hear me? So, yes. So I would like to invite to Dr. Sekasi Mingwa.
My endeavors, such as the Greater Caribbean light source and other things. So what I'd like to do in this presentation is to cover a number of things, such as the history of the African light source. What have we done? To give some details of the LAMP program, which is, it stands for Light Sources for Africa, the Americas, Asia, Middle East, and Pacific. And the Americas, up to this point, has been Mexico and the Caribbean, but we're now in the process of extending that throughout South America, and that's something that is in process right now. And sort of finally, I will go over some of the highlights of the African Light Source Conceptual Design Report. To begin, I mean, what is the synchrotron? This is a synchrotron that's the only one in Latin America. It's in Brazil, Campinas, and it's called the Sirius light source. And here it's interesting that when you build such a large facility, a lot of local industries and companies can play a tremendous role in their construction. And say 90% of the Sirius light source is from local industries providing various component parts of the accelerator system. In general, an accelerator, for instance, here is sort of a schematic. You have an electron beam that travels around typically several hundred meters in circumference. So this is a rather large infrastructure. And the beam is wiggled at certain points around the accelerator. And when you do that, either by dipole bending magnets or these things called insertion devices, the electron wiggles and gives off intense bursts of electromagnetic waves. And these waves span the spectrum from the infrared all the way out to very hard X-rays, as was mentioned in the previous presentation. But you can use these to study many disciplines. So that the nice thing about a synchrotron light source is that it's highly multidisciplinary. So if you visit anyone in operation, you will run into many biologists, you will run into chemists, engineers, material scientists, even paleontologists and archaeologists. So it's really a melting pot of academia, and many cross-disciplinary collaborations result from that, which push the technology and industry much further. So synchrotron light sources are rather unique devices. I mean, it's hard to imagine any other large infrastructure that would bring so much, brain power together to work on problems. Okay, so let me just go through some of the advantages for Africa. Why is it that we need an African light source? And by analogy, why do we need a Great Caribbean light source? First is to boost the scientific research. You have research capacity across the whole continent, also in regions, and also very locally within, a particular university or other research institution. So it can boost research and produce many collaborations. And it would fuel the African science renaissance. It would make Africa a major participant in the global research community. Having one somewhere on the continent would be able to tackle many serious diseases that are endemic to Africa. And you have diseases that are endemic to Latin America and the Greater Caribbean. But in the case of Africa, you have the problem of malaria and tuberculosis, AIDS, Ebola, and etc. There are so many diseases. Now, are you hearing me? I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself. Are you hearing me? Hello?
I'm hearing you, Sakazi.
You are, Camila.
Oh, wow.
That's the problem we lose them. So all the students in the audience are not here.
The Republicans are here perfectly well.
Yeah. Oh boy.
I imagine the same if we hear here and otherwise and as well.
This is what Carolina was saying, is that it's like two meetings. So all of us can hear each other, but the main place where you have government officials and students and so forth, they are not hearing us. That's a shame. So I don't know what to do. Maybe Marvadine, could you contact them again and let them know?
I'm gonna call them again. I'm calling.
Okay, go ahead, Caroline.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, something told me to stop and just check to make sure. So Carlos, are you hearing also? Okay, you're muted, Carlos, if you're
I'm going to give a phone call to Camilo and see what happens.
Okay. Oscar. Diodanis, do you hear? Even some of the people here that I see, but they're not. It's really weird. As soon as we start sharing screens, that's when we lose them.
Sikasi,
Yes.
could you present again?
Okay, so how much did you hear? Did you get past the first slide?
Yes. Now we need that you present again your slides.
Okay, let me go back.
Efectivamente no está funcionando de la manera mejor posible. No, tuvimos suerte porque en fin de cuentas, al menos la parte nuestra salió.
Now we are. You can continue, Sikasi.
Okay, I can skip some of the introductory. I can skip some. Can you hear me, Camila?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfectly.
so let me just start right about here because most of that was introductory.
No problema. Imagínate, si esta tragedia ha pasado administrativa, de adaptar. Sí. Pero lo que pasa es que todavía como que no nos acostumbramos al uso de la tecnología. No nos experiencia. Todavía participó en muchísimas reuniones.
Leo.
Okay, let me just start this. Okay, so I started talking about what a synchrotron is, and basically, this is the only one in Latin America, which is called Sirius, and it's located in Brazil. So you have an electron beam that inside this building that's traveling around in a circle, and at certain points you can wiggle the beam, and when you do that, it gives off intense bursts of X-rays that travel along beam lines to various samples to be studied. And the radiation goes from infrared wavelengths all the way up to hard X-ray wavelengths. And what I showed in this schematic was the fact that, you know, you have people working in many disciplines who are using these synchrotron light sources. So you have all in one location, you have chemists doing experiments, biologists, and so many other fields. You have even in paleontology, archaeology. So it's just an amazing large infrastructure that's revolutionizing many fields. And so that's one of the major advantages, is that it's multidisciplinary. So you get a lot of academic interactions at these facilities. And I was saying that the advantages for Africa, which would be essentially the same for the Greater Caribbean and Latin America, is that it would boost the research capacity, both locally at various institutions, for the region overall, and for the whole continent, or the whole continent of South America, or the grander region of the Caribbean. And I was saying that in Africa, there are diseases that are endemic to Africa, like malaria, tuberculosis, AIDS, Ebola. And there are also diseases that are endemic to the Greater Caribbean and Latin America. So that these light sources, if you have one in your region, you can make that a top priority. The present situation is that there are many light sources around the world, and researchers from Latin America can go and study, but you're subject to whatever the priorities are at those facilities. So you cannot just make them say, you know, give you a major amount of beam time to study whatever disease that you're most interested in. So that's the advantage of having one in the Greater Caribbean or in Africa, is that you can make the priorities such that you can address whatever it is that is happening in your region of the world. Let me just go down and say that another major advantage is science for peace, like CERN and Sesame. Sesame is in the Middle East, and Sesame has members, about 7 or 8 countries that are members, which would be similar to the Greater Caribbean light source. And in the case of Sesame, you have countries that are not normally politically friendly toward each other, like Iran and Israel, Pakistan, a number of the countries there, Jordan, are all working together at Sesame to pursue science, even though their governments have problems with each other. I think the same thing happens in the Greater Caribbean. There, of course, I think the biggest problem would be between the US and Cuba. If you have a light source where you have everyone working together for peaceful scientific purposes, that would help, I think, to smooth the relationship among the US and Cuba, for instance. And of course, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands are 2 US regions that are located in the Caribbean. A big thing is returning the African science diaspora. Many Africans are around the world working at light sources. And we have a good colleague at the Canadian Light Source who leads the structural biology beamline by the name of Michel Forget. He is from Cameroon. So if there were a light source on the African continent, I mean, perhaps he may decide, hey, he wants to get closer to home one day. But there are many other Africans around the world you will find at the light sources. So you, in a similar way, there, you know, I do a lot of work with Brookhaven, and I know that there are Brookhaven scientists who are from the Greater Caribbean region. So to allow people the opportunity to do research closer to their homes. And finally, if African countries are going to take control of their destinies and become major players in the international community, I think that a new fourth generation light source is absolutely essential. And I think the same for the Greater Caribbean region. There have been 4 generations of the synchrotron facilities, and now the 4th generation would put you right at the forefront of what is happening in the world. So this is a map of advanced light sources around the world. Now, advanced light sources is a general term, but they are 2 types. One are the synchrotron facilities that we have been discussing. And also you have something called free electron lasers, X-ray free electron lasers. And there are not so many of those. The downside of these free electron lasers is that you don't have many beam lines, whereas the synchrotrons can accommodate many more studies, many more beam lines. Typically, I mean, synchrotron light sources, you can have up to 100 beam lines in operation at some of them. Whereas the free electron lasers, you pretty much wouldn't have more than 10. The advantage of the free electron laser is that it's much brighter than the synchrotron light source. And you can monitor chemical reactions, for instance, on a much smaller scale. So each one has its advantages or disadvantages. But for the first advanced light source, I think every country realizes it needs to really go for the synchrotron light sources for its impact. Now, this is a little bit of a historical timeline of the African light source. Africa's first interactions with light sources was back in the 1990s, and Egypt and South Africa both started doing research at the light sources. In the case of South Africa, they were using the ESRF, which is in Grenoble, France. The ESRF is the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility. And it took a while. In 2003, 2002, 2003 was the first call for a Pan-African light source. And this was a call from an organization called the African Laser Center, which I was fortunate enough to be involved in the starting up of that particular organization. But we put in the strategy and business plan way back in 2003 that we should have a Pan-African synchrotron facility at some point in the near future. Not much happened in the interim, but I remember around 2014, Herman Winnick and Herman Winnick is an emeritus professor at Stanford University and was the one of the 2 or 3 people who started the idea of the Sesame light source, which, as we know now, has come into existence. But Herman and I wrote a paper urging the African community to push on an African light source. And there were people, Simon Connell being the leader, and there are some others named like Ntwami, Chepo Ntwani, who was from South Africa, took up the banner and ran with the idea of a of a Pan-African light source, and led the founding of the African Light Source Foundation. That organization had its first big conference, AFLS1, in 2015 at the ESRF, the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, and was hosted by that facility. And the Director General, Francesco Sette, has played a big role opening up his laboratory to us and continuing to promote the idea of an African light source. And since that time, we've had several, in fact, we pretty much every year will have an annual conference. This year's conference will take place in November. And for the last several years, 2 or 3 years since the pandemic, those conferences have been virtual. So we established an international advisory committee, and we were fortunate to get some major players around the world. I mentioned Professor Francesco Sette, who is the Director General of the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility. He's on the advisory committee. Rolf Hoyer, who was the director previously of CERN, he was the director of CERN during the time they discovered the famous Higgs particle. And he's now, since that time, he has been president of the Sesame Council. This is Simon Cornell, who was our fearless leader. He may be in the audience. He said he would try to join us, but he's the chair of the African Light Source Foundation Executive Committee. This is Harry Westphal. It's important to point out he's the director of the Sirius light source in Brazil. So it's very important. We've had support from the International Atomic Energy Agency, Professor Melissa Denecke, who is on our committee, and a number of others. Here is Caterina Biscari, who is the director of the Alba light source in Spain. So we have a lot of directors of light sources who are supporting what we are doing. And that 2015 meeting in Grenoble, we had a nice meeting. Grenoble is such a beautiful city, and you can see the mountains that surround the facility there at the ESRF. So here's Francesco Sette in the middle. I'm losing my cursor. So here's Francesco Sette, Simon Cornell. I guess I don't know if I don't have hair there either. I thought I had hair at that time, but I guess I didn't. Here's Tsepo from Ntwane from South Africa, who's played a tremendous role in this whole effort, and a number of other people. Okay, so when we had the conference, we had this. This was the speaker stick. So before every person was able to get up and speak, they had to hold up the speaker's permission, the speaker stick permission to speak. So these are from one of the African traditions. And this was the stick that called a meeting into order. Okay, so one of the important things that we did was to draw up a list of resolutions, which since it happened in Grenoble, it's been known as the Grenoble resolutions, which give the why for an African light source. Okay, so the first bullet says advanced light sources are the most transformative scientific instruments, similar to the invention of conventional lasers and computers, because we know how lasers have just revolutionized many fields. So have computers, and light sources are doing precisely the same thing, cutting across many academic disciplinary boundaries. So they are revolutionizing just a myriad of fundamental and applied sciences. The community of researchers around the world are rushing to construct ever more intense synchrotron facilities. And that's what I meant by the fourth generation, right? Most of the ones in existence up to now have been third generation. And now we have, due to Sweden, developed the fourth generation. And for the Greater Caribbean to get a synchrotron facility, or Africa, there's no reason to go back to the third generation. I think it should go directly to the fourth generation facility. Recently, I've been in discussions with some scientists from Uzbekistan who now are beginning to start a movement to bring a synchrotron facility to the Central Asia. And the person who is really pushing that is more interested at this point in the instrumentation. I think for Africa and for the Greater Caribbean, the idea is to bring a synchrotron to immediately have beamline scientists to pursue their research. But they're doing it from a little bit different perspective. They want to play around with magnets and get students up to speed on engineering with accelerators and so forth. So in their case, perhaps a third generation machine would be fine. In fact, there may be a possibility of getting such a machine or parts of the machine donated to them so that they can start educating students in engineering of accelerators. Okay, we mentioned earlier about the fact that having a light source would help with bringing the diaspora back. And and the last one, taking control of destiny. So I've covered that. Okay, so this is what our last in-person conference, which was in 2019 in Ghana. And in this one, we had a joint conference with the the beginnings of the African Crystallographic Association, as well as the African Physical Society. 2019 is Ghana's President Akufo-Addo said that he would champion the African light source and make it an official project of the African Union and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. And so based upon that, we at least have the attention of the leaders within the African Union, but we still have a long ways to go in actually convincing countries that this is something that is absolutely necessary for Africa's socioeconomic development, and the same for the Greater Caribbean. And from our initiative, there have been many publications written, and this is something that I think the Greater Caribbean has to begin to do, is to write publications for both scientific and public publications. Now, I want to digress a bit and talk about a project called LAMP, Light Sources for Africa, the Americas, Asia, Middle East, and Pacific, which pretty much covers the entire world of developing countries. And this is a part of the bottom-up approach from the African light source. We have to bottom up, we have to train many people to use light sources to increase our numbers of users. The top down, of course, was getting the support from people like the president of Ghana. So the LAMP project, the website is located there. There's the web link, and we invite you to go and visit that link. But we have Marielle Agbo-Hambata, who is from Benin, who is a member. Özgür Öztürk is working in Germany, but she's from Turkey. We have Sandro Scandalo from the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, and Michele Zima, who is from the University of Bari in Italy, but also he's director of, he's the executive outreach officer for the International Union of Crystallography. Now, for the LAMP project, we have a number of light sources that have agreed to help us train light source users. So these are our collaborators in this respect of training new users. And I point out that Sirius Light Source in Brazil is one of our partners. Well, you can see that we have partners from all over the world, USA, Spain, Canada, Italy, it just goes on, down to Thailand, Taiwan, and so forth. And the projects of LAMP, number one is to develop a strategic plan for each region. Let me stop here first and ask, Camilo, are you hearing me? Oh, no. Oh, you do hear? Okay, great, fantastic. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. And how am I on time? Okay, great. Okay, so LAMP projects then. So one thing we did, we developed strategic plans for each of our regions. We have a colloquium program where we send experienced light source users or accelerator people, synchrotron designers and operators and so forth, to various regions to educate people about what these devices are all about. We've produced a brochure for government officials and the public. So it's a non-technical brochure and it's on the website. And we also have the FAST team program, which is the faculty student team program, where we send a faculty person and that person's graduate student to a light source for 2 months of training. Okay, so the strategic plans can be found on our website. The colloquium program, the information about that can be found on our website. And this was one that is extremely interesting. We sent a physicist named Thierry d'Almeida, who works in France for the French Atomic Energy Commission, but he's originally from Benin. And we sent him to Benin to give a lecture about LAMP. And somehow the information got to the president of Benin, who invited Thierry to come back again for further discussions. And out of those discussions, Thierry and colleagues were able to establish a crystallography training program, not only for Benin students and researchers, but also for other countries, researchers and students from other countries. And so we had 3 training sessions before the pandemic hit. And these were in person. I mean, the school is designed to be in person, hands-on, because we're getting more and more crystallography equipment. We have a single crystal diffractometer, and currently a powder diffractometer is arriving. And by the end of the year, a tomograph machine will be arriving. But you can see that we've had many learners, many students from a number of African countries that are there, not only Benin, but Burkina Faso, the Democratic Republic of Congo, where our first speaker was from earlier today, and so forth. You can see that we had quite a few. And we've had 20 invited speakers to come in and to teach the students. And this graph shows you the various concentrations of the students. So you can see we had most of the students coming from physics discipline, but we also had chemistry and material science, biology, pharmaceutical sciences. So this has been an extremely successful program. In fact, I think one of our participants, Marvadine Singh Wilmot, Dr. Singh Wilmot, visited and participated in the program. So it's not only for students, but it's also for people who already are researchers in crystallography. And this connects them with the facilities there. So this would be a training program, or it is a training program. And it's also a research center for crystallographers. Now, this is the LAMP brochure where we describe in 5 languages. So you can see Spanish is one of the languages. We have Portuguese as one of the languages, Arabic, French, and English, and is located on our website. Now, the faculty student team project that I mentioned, and I was very disappointed that we did not have so many applications from the Greater Caribbean in our last competition. But we had so many from Africa. And I think the reason is that one of the things that the African Light Source and LAMP does is to host a synchrotron school at the first of the year. This year was in the end of January, 1st of February for 2 weeks. And the students there learn all about, they're introduced to what these synchrotrons are all about and encouraged to apply for one of these grants, so that the program gives the faculty person and the student each 2,000 euros to cover transportation and some of the living expenses. And our partner Light Source, the 17 that I showed you earlier, will provide free housing and contribute to per diem meals. So that it's really a very nice program that will cover most of your travel and living expenses. And we need to get more applications from the Greater Caribbean region. This is an example. This is a person who visited the Siam Light Source in Thailand. This is Dr. Oladijo, who is from the Botswana International University of Science and Technology, and his student who went with him. and they were able to stay there for 2 months. Now, Phil actually was a LAMP awardee previously. So a year prior to this, he spent 2 months in Japan at their photon factory. So you don't necessarily have to stay at the same light source. Let me skip this. This is that African Laser Center that I mentioned to you, which is a part of our bottom-up, because we are building laser laboratories and collaborations across laser labs. And we've had collaborations involving mainly South African researchers in collaboration with researchers from these other regions. The African Laser Center is based in South Africa at their National Laser Center in Pretoria. And this is when we founded the organization back in 2003. And I actually had hair there. I don't have hair anymore. It's interesting to work with people early in their career and to see them blossom. Now, this gentleman in the back, in the very back in the middle, is Philemon Njawaha, who was the chair of the African Laser Center. He was the manager of their National Laser Center. But for the last 10 years or so, he's been Director General of Science and Technology for the whole country of South Africa. So it's great to have people who are in these positions who know what we're trying to do when we're out here working in the trenches. Okay, so here was a synchrotron science workshop in South Africa that was held back in 2011. Here's Francesco Sette. You can see that he was helping to promote synchrotrons in Africa way back then. So he's been involved for a long time. Here's Simon Connell, who is our current chair of the African Light Source, and a number of other people. Here's Herman Winnick, in fact. I mentioned Herman Winnick. He is the honorary president of the Greater Caribbean Light Source. He is a man who has been promoting light sources in developing countries for decades now. And I think he's someone that we all should be familiar with. Okay, so we wrote a strategic plan. They asked me to chair the writing of the strategic plan. And one of the things that we said is that South Africa should, in fact, become an associate member of the ESRF. And in fact, that eventually happened. And here you can see, here's the Director General, Francesco Sette, along with Simon Connell, who was the chair of the South African Light Source Foundation, and Tsepo Tswane, who has been working with Simon and the rest of us in pushing this forward. Okay, so we have come to the point of a conceptual design report. We have a rather large editorial staff. This was a major undertaking. And let me just go, just to give you an idea, we have approximately 100 people who have contributed to this whole process. And somehow, I don't know, I was tricked into becoming the editor-in-chief somehow. So this project has consumed my life for the last 2 years, almost full-time, because we've had many people contributing to it. And my job has been to contribute to it, as well as to try to edit and mold all of these contributions into a coherent document, which we now have the first draft. And I've shared that draft with the executive committee, the interim executive committee of the Greater Caribbean Light Source. So let me just go through and just highlight some of the main parts of it. Chapter 1 is to give an overview and a description of what an advanced light source, like a synchrotron light source, is all about, and the fact that it produces radiation from the infrared all the way out to the hard X-ray regime. So for the general public, we tried to give some idea of what the various wavelengths are like. So you can see infrared radiation now gets you into biological systems. So a lot of biology is being studied by using the infrared wavelength of these synchrotron light sources. Of course, these light sources' wavelengths can be tuned higher. As I said, it spans all the way out to the X-ray regime. So you're now getting into the size of bacteria. the size of viruses, proteins, and chemical molecules. And in fact, because of that, these light sources played a leading role in understanding the coronavirus so that the pharmaceutical companies could devise vaccines and treatments for the coronavirus. So COVID-19, to a large extent, was brought under control by synchrotron light sources, okay? And that comes under the whole term of structural biology, trying to understand biological systems. So in the conceptual design report, we spent a lot of time talking about these various scientific benefits, structural biology, the fact you have materials can be studied for energy applications, and some of that was touched upon this morning by the previous presentation. So solar cell materials, that you can study those materials. Batteries to store energy, the materials can be studied at synchrotron light sources. Geoscience, environmental science, climate, plants, soil, agriculture, paleontology, archaeology. We discuss all of these in the conceptual design report. And for Africa, the dots correspond to where samples were taken that are paleontologist samples. The other ones have to do with more minerals, geological mineral samples for the square boxes. But you can see the importance in paleontology. Look at all the dots in South Africa. It's a rich source of skeletal remains that are studied at light sources. Chapter 3, we look at the social and economic benefits. And one of the things we briefly talked about was justifications for large-scale infrastructures. If you go back to the 1940s and 50s, it was driven more by national security and national ambitions like the space race. The Manhattan Project, which was the project. It was one of the first big science projects. Then as we moved into the 1970s, it was driven more by scientific curiosities. And that brings us to things like the Fermi National Accelerator, where I worked as a young physicist, the CERN Accelerator, and many. These were big infrastructures. Now these big infrastructures are turning their attention to grand challenges like the climate crisis, the health crisis, aging, and the various sustainable development goals of the United Nations. Okay, and then, I guess I can skip some of these, but I think the final one down here is one that is extremely important. Now, this was a statement by Andrew Harrison, who was the former chief executive officer of the Diamond synchrotron light source in the United Kingdom. And he gave a presentation to the African Light Source Foundation, one of our meetings, where he said that for every English pound that is put into the facility, 3.5 times that much in finance goes back into the economy. So that these facilities allow companies to come in, get a better idea of the materials that they are using, and go out and make much bigger profits, which feed right back into the economy. So that there is a tremendous economic benefit of having one of these synchrotron facilities. Now, for the history, we talk a lot about various organizations that have been involved. And I mentioned the African Laser Center. Here's another laser network called the LAM Network, which was coming out of Senegal and led by Professor Amadou Wage from the Cheikh Anta Diop University in Senegal. The LAMP project I've mentioned, X-Tech Lab I've mentioned, but we explain all of this in the conceptual design report. As I mentioned before, we give a synchrotron light source school every year, and I think it's extremely important for the Greater Caribbean to send many researchers and students to that school. It's a virtual school. so that we can accommodate. Last year, we had close to 200 participants. And I think much of that is the reason I said that we had a lot of African applications to the LAMP projects, fasting programs, to spend time at light sources for training. Other organizations, BioStruct, Africa, is trying to increase and promote the field of structural biology in Africa, as well as START. START is a program that has pushed to promote structural biology and energy materials. The African Physical Society has been a tremendous supporter, and in the Greater Caribbean, the physical societies there hopefully will be big supporters of the Greater Caribbean light source. Chapter 7, we discussed the statutes. We now have 2 multinational synchrotron facilities in operation, the European, the ESRF, as well as Sesame in the Middle East. And so we've studied their articles of governance, and we've tried to mold those into an African situation. And then chapter 8, we discussed the details of what a 4th generation synchrotron light source is. And our prototype is coming from Sweden, because they were the first to generate this idea, to develop this idea of a 4th generation synchrotron light source facility. So their light source we've used as the prototype. And so our prototype is a 3 GeV, approximately 500 meter. And this 100 picosecond, this is the horizontal beam size. This is sort of a technical term, but don't worry about it so much. But the point of the matter is that the electron beam that generates the synchrotron radiation, the smaller in size you can make that beam, the brighter will be the beam and the brightness of the facility. And these synchrotron facilities are just many thousands of times brighter than the 3rd generation synchrotron facilities. One thing that I like to point out in the African Light Source Conceptual Design Report, we talk about the various ancillary requirements, what other kind of systems, water, waste disposal, etc. But in terms of the electrical power, typically you would want the Greater Caribbean Light Source and the African Light Source to be able to accommodate up to 10 megawatts of capacity. And I'd like to point out that the Sesame Light Source is the first synchrotron facility to be totally powered by solar power. And this is something that we should consider for the African light source. Renewable energies should be the goal, as opposed to using the traditional coal or whatever, oil or whatever the kind of power you're using. A great advantage of having a synchrotron facility is the campus, the high-tech campus that grows around it. And it's very important that the Diamond Light Source, to point out that there are about 100 companies, over 100, that are located near there so that they can be nearby to use the facility. But not only that, you have other institutes, you have universities and others who set up shop very close so that they will be able to have ongoing proximity and able to easily use the beam lines at the Diamond Light Source. Okay, and then finally, in chapter 10, we discuss some of the projects that were funded by LAMP. You know, we've sent visitors from Egypt, we've sent visitors from Senegal and other countries, so we discussed those. And then finally, we have concluding remarks, how we all throughout Africa and abroad have to work together to make this a dream. And it's often quoted that, you know, Kwame Nkrumah, first president of independent Ghana, sort of the originator of Pan-Africanism, said to be an African, you do not need to be born in Africa. Africa must be born in you. And in fact, all over the world, we all have Africa born in us, because that's where mankind originated. And then there's this beautiful song that was written by one of my favorite jazz trumpeters, Hugh Masekela, who said, I want to be there when the people start to turn it around, when they triumph over poverty. I want to be there when the people win the battle against AIDS I want to lend a hand, so send me. And that, I think, should be the attitude of all of us as we embark upon the African light source, as well as the Greater Caribbean light source. And what I'm showing you here is the interim executive committee of the Greater Caribbean light source. And as I mentioned, Herman Winnick is the honorary president. You've heard from Galileo Violini, who was affectionately known as Leo, who gave the presentation from the Dominican embassy there, the Dominican ministry there in the Dominican Republic. He's the co-chair. Victor Del Rio from Australia, who is originally from Mexico, is also a co-chair. And I'm currently serving as a co-chair, but I'm looking to step down because we have to, I mean, this is the interim committee. So we have to have a voted in executive committee at some time in the very near future. And so we have to choose our co-chairs of the executive committee. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention. And I will stop sharing my screen. Okay, so hopefully you are all there, and I hope I wasn't talking to myself. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Takashi. Thank you. Thank you, Zakasi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And thank you so much for the invitation. And I can take any questions if you have them. I don't know if Simon Cornell is in the audience, but if he is, can you make him a co-host? Because he should be able to answer questions as well.
We're going to have some minutes, so some questions. So from the auditorium, do you have any questions? So now we're going to give the speech to our translator. He's going to ask you the question from the auditorium.
Yes. Okay, I can barely hear you.
So the first question is, what are the environmental repercussions of the
I can't use you sound far away. I can barely hear you. Can you repeat the question, Camilo? Because I could hear you pretty well. Marbadine, can you hear me?
Yes, Prof. I'm hearing you very well, but I'm also not hearing from.
Not hearing them. Okay.
Okay.
Oh no, the echoes have returned. Perhaps if Camilo could because I can hear you, Camilo.
Or perhaps we can put the questions in the chat.
Oh yeah, yes, that's right. If you could write it in the chat, that would be the best.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Carolina, you're still there, right?
Yes, I am, and now we hear you. Yes, we can hear you from the public.
Okay. Okay. I have 3 questions on the students' behalf.
Okay.
The first question is, what are the environmental repercussions of the synchrotron?
What are the kind of
the environmental repercussions of the synchrotron?
Oh, you mean negative impacts on the environment?
Yes, the negative impact.
Okay, so yeah, the synchrotron is not a dangerous device. It's nothing like a nuclear facility. So you don't really have to worry about any kind of negative impacts on the environment, really. This is not, it's a big infrastructure, and you're dealing with elementary particles, electrons and things, but fortunately, it's not something that it poses any serious effects on the environment.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to answer the question to the students now.
Sure.
No tiene ningún tipo de impacto negativo sobre el ambiente debido a su The second, and then now the third question, is it possible one of the synchrotron in the world emit Cherenkov radiation?
I did point get that.
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. Is it possible that one of the synchrotrons in the world emit Cherenkov radiation?
Okay, so you have to, okay, now I'm a physicist, but I'm ashamed to say I haven't thought about Cherenkov radiation in many decades. So you'd have to ask me to, you'd have to send that to me and let me go back to my freshman physics and see. But I don't know the point of I mean, there's no, if you're thinking about effects on the environment, there's nothing like that. But if you're talking about, I mean, electrons passing through materials can emit Cherenkov radiation, but that has nothing to do with what the synchrotron facility is doing. Because the synchrotron is only interested in the electron beam in as much as it generates the electromagnetic radiation. So the electron beam is almost irrelevant, and otherwise. I mean, things like Cherenkov radiation, you'd have to worry about if you were doing, in my field of high energy physics, where you're actually using these electron beams to actually interact with each other or other materials. But the synchrotron facility, the only thing the electron beam does is travel, is stored in a circular machine, and you wiggle the beam at various points to throw off synchrotron radiation. So that's the only, I mean, Cherenkov radiation is not important.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to answer the question to the students. En relación a la Bueno, para responder la pregunta del estudiante, el síncrotrón, debido a la estructura del síncrotrón, no representa ningún impacto negativo para el ambiente, ya que el síncrotrón utiliza electrones, así que la radiación del Cherenkov no representa ningún impacto como tal.
Ningún problema.
Okay.
Yo creo que eso es una pregunta de Leo.
I would like, first of all, Secretary, that you answer, please, the last question, because the question was put in Spanish, whether the synchrotron cannot be harmed for the environment because of accelerated particles and so on. So this is one point which is basic for the big public. We know what are the problem, but you may know that, certainly know that even the idea of having the CERN has created concern about the population living around, whether this may lead to harm for the health and so because of accelerated particles. So I would ask you first to answer this in order to make the field clear from this problem, and then I'll make a comment.
No, but the radiation, okay, you do have radiation. I mean, these are X-rays, for instance, but you have lots of, what do you call shielding? You have lots of shielding so that the radiation is contained. So there's really not, any real problem. Now, one of my jobs is as a judge for the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So I deal with, real hazards. And I can tell you, this is nothing like that. So for, if you want to make the association or similarity to a nuclear facility, it's nothing of that order. I mean, sure, there's radiation, but it's shielded. I mean, you have radiation coming from your dentist office, right? I mean, the medical doctor takes X-rays of you, but the person, the technician who gives the X-ray is shielded. And so for the synchrotron facilities, you have to do the same thing. You have to shield it so that the X-rays do not get out into the community to harm anybody.
Yes, well, the reason why I raised my hand actually was not that much to ask a question, but to make a comment. There were 2 points of your talk which I think deserve to be underscored. One is the famous estimate from Diamond of the return of 250% return against 100 investment. This is probably one of the most optimistic answers about the return of investment in big science. But I would like to say that even if one takes a more conservative approach, since I'm working in science policy, I would like to say that I've read no comment stating that less than 20-30% is the return of investment in science. And so this is something which unfortunately is not so considered so much in these regions. It is true that, of course, this return comes from an average of investment which don't produce return, but if one does not make attempts of doing many things, one cannot be so optimistic that only those things which give a big return are useful. But certainly the case we are pointing out of the synchrotron is a case in which the return is almost sure. But the second point I wanted to comment about what we are saying is that I found extremely important the slide you presented of the side activities which may arise around the synchrotron. In a sense, this shows that what really one needs is not only a synchrotron. One needs to make a big program of development in this region. And this has 2 lines, in my view, has 2 lines of action. One is the line of developing just the area of the synchrotron with additional facility. In the case of Sirius in Brazil, there are many labs around Sirius which benefit of the presence of Sirius, but they also their independent roadmap to scientific development in biology, in biotechnology, and so on. Second, that when we talk, as it is the case both in Africa or in the Caribbean, of a big facility which necessarily will be hosted in one country, one should understand what is the role of the other countries. It is clear that there could be a certain difficulty for many countries to collaborate in the investment in another country for a big regional facility. So one should have in mind also some additional facility development in other countries, which in a sense make part of the same object. I explain. A synchrotron in a country in the Caribbean may be very important, but it will be located necessarily in one country. This may be Mexico, this may be Colombia, maybe Dominican Republic, maybe Central America, but wherever it is not elsewhere. However, this should not be seen as a loss for the other countries. The other countries should have minor facilities, less expensive facilities, but also related to the same structure. So what I have in mind as a Caribbean synchrotron is a facility which has smaller facilities in other countries. For example, could be an accelerator to produce radioisotopes in one place, and so on, so that the development is the development of many countries together. There was a sentence which was very popular during the pandemic, very popular, but has been easily forgotten. When people were talking about the vaccines, people were saying no country should remain behind. Well, this was said by the first world countries in the Abu Dhabi G20 meeting at the beginning of the pandemic, was forgotten the next day, but this never mind. I think that the same happens with this. To create a synchrotron in Mexico or Colombia or wherever should not be should not be seen as a mechanism which leaves behind the rest. And the rest is very important, in particular in one region. I'm thinking about the islands of the Caribbean islands. They are very small. They cannot invest a big amount of money in that. But St. Lucia development, just to make an example of Barbados, is just as important for the development of this region as that of Colombia or Mexico or Panama, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think, okay, so even though the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility is in Grenoble in France, all of the countries benefit from it because they're involved in the governance. You know, they can set priorities so that France doesn't completely control it. So by the same token, if you have one in the Greater Caribbean, it would be a multinational, hopefully, so that you know, all the countries come together and decide mutually what the priorities are. Not only that, you have many possibilities of beamline. So it could be that, for instance, if the facility is located in Colombia, Jamaica could have its beamline there, and they, you know, pretty much control or manage that beamline. Of course, they would share with others, but the point is that they can manage it and set the priorities for their own beamline, so that all the countries can actually, you know, have major portions that they manage. And so it really would be a multinational device. Okay, any other questions? Camilo, are you there?
Yes, of course, I'm here. I listen to your comment. And
No, Camilo. Camilo, I just want to make sure I didn't lose the host, organizers. I don't know if they can you hear me?
I'm calling again.
Camilo.
I'm calling Camilo again.
Oh, you're calling.
Hey,
okay,
hello.
Carolina.
Yeah. Now I came back. So thank you, Sekasi, for this talk. I have a question that is related with what is the biggest challenge
we keep dropping
that you had in this project?
Bien, answering, I see Comunicaciones Unicórdoba connected, and they have a double screen in which you appear and also the public. I am insisting.
Now, can you hear me, Sekasi?
Yeah, but I don't think they may see us, but they don't hear us, I guess.
I'm hearing you.
Okay, well,
hello.
Wait a couple of minutes.
No.
So Marvin,
can you hear me?
No nos responden.
Not responding.
No.
Let me see.
Sekasi, you were saying something to me?
No, I was just saying, I hope you're not frightened for tomorrow.
No, absolutely not. We'll take it on. It's a challenge that we welcome.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Right. So I wanted to ask you to comment. Maybe we can continue the conversation in the meantime.
Yeah, what is the question?
I'm not sure if they're hearing us. So maybe.
Hello.
Okay, let's see here. Camilo, are you there?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So could you answer the question, Carolina, and later we can continue?
Okay, that was Marvin Dean. Go ahead, Marvin Dean.
Right. I was going to ask for you to comment, for instance, on the Brazilian light source. If you know how many users of the beamline, the different beamlines in Brazil are coming from people in
this part of the world below the equator?
Yeah, that I do not know. I don't have the statistics on that, although I do know that they do have people from Argentina and Chile, and so they do. But exactly how many versus how many from other parts of the world, I'm not really sure. But of course, in Brazil itself, it has many users. So that's the key. You know, we have to build the number of users, and that's why I think programs like the LAMP program are very important, because you want, you know, to convince a government to invest, you have to be able to show you have the necessary number of people to use it. So that's something where we are doing all of the planning. We have to really stress sending our young people and even older people to light sources so that they can develop collaborations. And the nice thing about a light source is that once you go and learn the system, when you go back home, of course, you can mail in future samples for data acquisition. So you don't physically have to go back to the light source. They have in-house scientists who will do the measurements for you and send you the data. So that's another great advantage of having this synchrotron light source. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you so much.
I can show you some of those statistics next week.
Thank you for your answer. I have another question that is related with the project. That is, what is the biggest challenge that you had in this African Sincrotrón project?
The biggest challenge is convincing governments that they need to go ahead with this. You know, we've gotten ourselves poised and ready, right? I mean, we've done all of the background work. We're now about to finalize a conceptual design report. We know a lot about the users across the continent, who they are and where they are. So at this point, it's up to the governments to decide that they want to push forward, because once they give the red light for that, then things should move fairly quickly. So the biggest challenge, I think, and probably will be the biggest challenge in the Greater Caribbean region, is to get the governments to say, yes, let's do this.
Thank you, Sekasi. And thank you for your talk. It's really an inspiration for us. And we hope that we are going to follow these steps in this great Caribbean.
Great, fantastic.
So now we're going to pass for our panel that is called Sincrotrón as Tool for Progress in the Context of Science for Peace and the Sustainable Objectives Development. Y para este panel vamos a tener a tres invitados. Primero, Andrea Sánchez, representante del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación de la República de Colombia en temas de ciencias básicas y del espacio. Al profesor Hernán Garrido, de aquí en la Universidad de Córdoba, del Departamento de Física, y al profesor Eduardo Posada, director del Centro Internacional de Física y profesor de la Universidad Nacional de Colombia. Entonces, le damos el paso tanto a nuestros compañeros del panel como al profesor Eduardo Posada. Profesor Eduardo Posada va a estar en línea y nosotros aquí de forma presencial. Bueno. Bueno, aquí me acompaña Andrea y Hernán. Ah, bueno, sí. Vamos. Bueno, esperemos darle la entrada. Bueno, mientras el profesor Eduardo Posada se conecta, quiero preguntarte, Andrea, ¿cuál es el rol que el Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación está desarrollando actualmente en Colombia y el rol de ciencias básicas y del espacio en ese contexto?
Bueno, buenas tardes para todos. Eh, por una parte, la Política Nacional de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación, el COMPES 4069, establece que el Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación tiene un compromiso de generar herramientas de política que orienten y fortalezcan las ciencias básicas y del espacio y demás áreas disciplinares para la generación de nuevo conocimiento. Por otra parte, eh, para la misión de sabios, generar políticas de Estado en ciencias básicas es uno de los más grandes desafíos que plantea. Por ejemplo, para maximizar la interacción entre lo fundamental y lo ambiental, se propone establecer una política de Estado que a través de las ciencias básicas o que ponga a trabajar las ciencias básicas en función de soluciones ambientales a través de programas integrales, es decir, de un conjunto o un paquete de iniciativas en ciencias básicas que en diferentes áreas disciplinares formulen proyectos para la solución de estos problemas. Actualmente, MinCiencias cuenta con diferentes mecanismos como convocatorias o invitaciones a través de las que se promueve esa participación de los grupos de investigación, de los centros de investigación, de los institutos de investigación colombianos, y que a partir también de lo propuesto en la política orientada por misiones, donde con esos 5 retos, bioeconomía, salud, alimentación, energía y ciencia para la paz, también están involucrados de manera transversal las ciencias básicas.
O sea que tenemos una propuesta de ciencia en el marco de la paz. Bueno, y ahora continuando en estos proyectos que son de ciencia, tecnología e innovación para el desarrollo regional, ¿qué podrías tú decir al respecto, Hernán? ¿Para qué es importante que estemos aquí hablando de un proyecto para hacer un ciclotrón del Gran Caribe?
Pues el desarrollo tecnológico, como vimos en la conferencia del doctor Secasi, conlleva a muchas cosas importantes. Eh, Ciencia para la paz es uno de los retos más importantes que se deben enfrentar acá en Córdoba, porque es una región que ha sido estigmatizada por el conflicto armado. Hay mucha población campesina, ¿sí? Que debemos traer a los centros e instituciones a formarse para crear ese desarrollo sostenible de nuestro departamento de Córdoba. Entonces, el proyecto del Sincrotrón nos llevaría un poco a ese objetivo principal que tenemos, no solo subsanar la parte del conflicto, sino formar los nuevos profesionales que necesitamos en la región cordobesa. Y pues el Departamento de Física de la Universidad de Córdoba, la Facultad de Ciencias Básicas, eh, la Universidad de Córdoba como tal se ha lanzado a la región. Y pues en cabeza de nuestro señor rector, esa es la misión que se nos ha encargado a los docentes. Y lo otro, el aspecto de formación postdoctoral que está creciendo y doctoral en nuestra región de importancia. Veo que no solo en astronomía hay ese hueco, esa falta. El doctor Secasi mostró una imagen muy impactante del hueco del sincrotrón en la región Caribe, en la región africana. y pues ya se solucionó el problema para los pueblos africanos y vemos todo el movimiento que ha generado a través de todo el país. Entonces, para nuestra región es importante eso y más esto que se está dando hoy aquí en Montería. Yo creo que es una noticia regional que se ha vuelto nacional. Es un problema. Eso tenemos a Andrea acá con nosotros.
Tú mencionabas que además de física, tenemos otros grandes proyectos en astronomía. Hay unos sistemas de radiotelescopios, se llama el sistema BLA, BLBI, y pues, cuando uno mira el mapa, tampoco tenemos en esta región uno de esos radiotelescopios que puede ayudar a conectar toda la red. En el caso del mapa que el profesor se casi mostraba, ahí vemos también esa ausencia de un ciclotrón, cómo estaba la ausencia en África. Entonces la idea es cómo estos grandes proyectos mueven a todos los actores del Sistema Nacional de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación para volver la ciencia como un motor de economía y que podamos ser una sociedad basada en conocimiento. Ahora me gustaría invitar al profesor Eduardo Posada. ¿Estás por ahí?
Camilo, y la ciencia no debe ser, todos debemos tener acceso a la formación académica y bueno, eso se refleja en desarrollo sostenible en nuestra región y en el país mismo. Entonces, movernos en esta dirección ha sido lo más acertado que hemos hecho y pues tenemos personas ya senior que han dirigido proyectos y creo que el sincrotrón para el Gran Caribe es una realidad. Como dijo el doctor Galileo Violini, no importa dónde esté en el Gran Caribe, pero lo necesitamos.
Entonces vemos cómo pues, se han unido personas de diferentes nacionalidades para impulsar este proyecto que es de largo aliento. Hay unos presupuestos generales de unos 50 millones de dólares a 10 años para el desarrollo del proyecto. Entonces la idea es que nos podamos conectar todos, tanto el gobierno con sus diferentes facetas, como representantes de la empresa privada, también pues, de diferentes fuentes de financiamiento. Me gustaría preguntarle a Andrea que nos hables un poco de estas convocatorias que el ministerio está promoviendo conceptualmente, ¿qué tienen detrás?
Pues dentro de los mecanismos con los que cuenta Ciencias de convocatorias, en el año se están manejando 2 convocatorias por cada uno de los retos que mencioné en la anterior pregunta. Y específicamente en ciencias básicas y del espacio se está empezando a trabajar en esas necesidades tanto de recursos como de características y de política para generar lo que sea pertinente a las convocatorias y demás mecanismos de ciencias básicas del espacio.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Andrea. Vamos a esperar unos minutos mientras el profesor Eduardo Posada se conecta y ya continuamos con el panel. No sé si ustedes en el parte del público tienen alguna pregunta. O de las personas que están conectadas Creo que está el profesor Posada. Sí. Hola, profe, te escuchamos. Profesor Posada. Ahí estaba con el profesor Posada. ¿Nos puede hablar de nuevo? Profe, si puedes hablar. Ya puedes hablar, profesor Posada. Lo estábamos escuchando ahora. Bueno, mientras el profesor Posada se conecta del público, ¿alguna pregunta? Creo que has hecho una pregunta ahorita.
Bueno, un poco abordando la perspectiva de la viabilidad técnica del proyecto como tal, ¿qué desafíos tendrían que enfrentar, sobre todo pues acá en países latinoamericanos, para implementar un proyecto de esta envergadura?
Bueno, me gustaría darles la opción a nuestros panelistas, su opinión.
Yo creo que lo primero que se debe convencer es a la administración, ¿no? A través de un proyecto de ley que entre a través del Congreso. Y por eso, pues, están reunidos, se están haciendo estos mini simposios para darle a conocer a los diferentes ministerios de ciencia de qué es un sincrotrón, la necesidad que se tiene el sincrotrón y cuáles son las ventajas de tenerlo, ¿no? Entonces, esto debe entrar por los ministerios y llegar al Congreso para convertirse en un proyecto de ley. O sea, primero hay que convencer es en realidad a los administradores de los diferentes países del Caribe y pues esa es la finalidad de nuestro simposio.
Pues los desafíos, como lo planteas tú, tiene que ver en primer lugar con recursos, capacidades técnicas, capacidades administrativas y también hay una ventaja para la región y es que ya existen otros proyectos de sincrotrón en el mundo. Entonces fácilmente quienes están interesados en esta propuesta pues pueden seguir el camino y entender las fallas y los avances que han tenido en los demás proyectos. Eso facilitaría un poco las cosas. También es importante entender hasta qué punto, en cuestión de compromiso, pueden en realidad cada uno de los países interesados aportar, no solamente financieramente, y ver la viabilidad a partir de eso del proyecto como tal.
No sé si alguien de las personas que nos está escuchando en línea, del comité del simposio, por ejemplo, el profesor Galileo Violini, nos quería comentar algo.
Yo quisiera despejar el terreno del problema si, gracias Camilo, si un proyecto de esta naturaleza es un proyecto compatible o no con nuestros países. Ahora, no quiero insistir sobre el hecho que mencionaba antes, que América Latina invierte en ciencia 0,6% de su Producto Interno Bruto, que es una cantidad muy mediocre, sobre todo considerando que se llega a estos 0,6% gracias al hecho que Brasil invierte el 1%. porque fuera de Brasil estamos por debajo de este dato. Pero, ¿cuánto cuesta hacer un sincrotrón? Seamos concretos. Un sincrotrón cuesta, pensando que tiene 20 años de vida, aproximadamente unos $1.000 millones, digamos. Son $50 millones por año. Y además tampoco se gastan todos al comienzo, porque evidentemente toda la primera etapa de los primeros 4 o 5 años, los costos son mucho menores. Ahora, no quiero hacer un comentario fácil, decir, ¿saben ustedes cuánto ha gastado Centroamérica en gastos militares en el 2021? Bueno, le puedo decir, $2.000 millones. Y toda la región ha gastado $20.000 millones. Entonces, digamos, no es este el problema. Es claro, se puede decir que los gastos militares existen. No quiero hacer una polémica aparentemente pacifista y antimilitarista, que sería idiota. Pero quiero decir que para una región, un continente de 500 millones de personas, invertir en un proyecto de este tipo $50 millones está al alcance. El problema es si se justifica como costo de oportunidad cuando pensemos en los otros problemas que tiene nuestra región. Ahora, hay dos temas que yo quiero subrayar. Uno es el tema de la seguridad alimentaria. Es un tema que existe en todos los países. Los países agrícolas necesitan desarrollar la agricultura. Entonces, tener instrumentos para modernizar la cadena alimentaria, para modernizar la agricultura, ya son cosas que dan un beneficio de corto plazo seguro y sin discusión. Segundo tema, ¿cuáles son los fringe benefits de esas estructuras? El caso de Brasil es notorio. En Brasil ha podido crear alrededor del primer sincrotrón, el que se hizo en los años 90, una infraestructura tecnológica que le ha permitido construir el segundo sincrotrón, como decía antes Secasi, al 90% con capacidades industriales internas. Alrededor de eso ha surgido una industria farmacéutica que ha podido permitir a Brasil afrontar muchos problemas con capacidades autónomas. Entonces, si miramos de manera global el desarrollo científico e industrial con su impacto en temas sociales y económicos que son cruciales para nuestro país, el sincrotrón ya se justifica. Y luego hay un último tema que quise decir, porque lo ligo a lo que estaba diciendo la doctora Sánchez. La doctora Sánchez hablaba justamente de la importancia de las ciencias básicas, del desarrollo de ciencias básicas, y esto yo lo ampliaría diciendo que la inclusión es un problema, la inclusión en todos los sentidos es importante. Entonces, yo no veo un programa de ser un sincrotrón desvinculado de un programa global de desarrollo científico e integrado con un programa de educación. Uno de los errores, pienso yo, de nuestros países es de pensar en los programas, digamos, nacionales, en los planes nacionales de educación, como si fueran planes diferentes de los planes nacionales de ciencia. Los dos temas son ligados.
Ahora sí aparece el micrófono.
De hecho, si miramos, por ejemplo, hablemos del caso de Colombia. En el caso de Colombia, indudablemente, el nivel, digamos, los datos sobre el desarrollo, sobre las deserciones escolares durante la etapa inicial es un dato bastante positivo. Pero sabemos también que entonces el acceso a la universidad hoy es diferente de hace 20 años, estamos de acuerdo. Pero si miramos los datos sobre las deserciones escolares, las deserciones universitarias, los datos no son tan buenos, no son tan satisfactorios. Digamos, por realidad, no estoy criticando lo que se ha hecho, grandes progresos, pero hay que mirar de manera de verdad que el progreso que se está realizando sea un progreso que alcanza a todos. El futuro premio Nobel colombiano no nacerá necesariamente en el Chocó. No, en el Chicó, perdón, en el Chicó, quiero decir. Es muy posible que pueda nacer en un pueblo del Amazonas, pero hay que tener una educación inclusiva, una posibilidad de llegar a los máximos niveles científicos. Entonces, cuando yo pienso en el sincrotrón, no pienso solamente en el sincrotrón, pienso en algo que va mucho más allá. Pienso en un país que pueda competir a nivel internacional en el desarrollo científico con cualquier otro país y que dentro de este país dé esta posibilidad a cualquiera de sus ciudadanos y no solamente a algunos. Tal vez no contesté la pregunta de eso. Con esto yo creo que vale la pena invertir en un sincrotrón, sí, pero con muchas otras cosas.
Bueno, creo que ahora sí tengo acceso.
Sí.
Es que no, me acaban de promover a panelista. Entonces ya tengo micrófono y cámara. Así que disculpen por no haberme conectado antes, pero aquí estoy. Mucho gusto, muy agradecido con todos. Bueno, creo que ya ustedes me ven también, por lo menos ven un pedazo. Y yo los veo perfectamente, así que muy buenos días a todos. Pues yo estuve oyendo a pedazos porque estaba tratando de conectarme, pero me agrada mucho estar en compañía de ustedes y bueno, adelante, sigamos con el evento.
La pregunta que tenía para el profesor Eduardo Posada es ¿cómo se ha venido desarrollando este proyecto del ciclotrón en el Gran Caribe? ¿Y cuál es la perspectiva que tiene al respecto?
Un proyecto como este, pues es un buen mecanismo para aglutinar esa política, para tratar de que la política sea una cosa regional. Y eso no ha sido fácil debido a las diferencias de política que han tenido los diferentes países, a los regímenes que hemos tenido. Y yo en este momento, pues por el lado de Colombia, veo que si bien en el plan de desarrollo hay un esfuerzo para mejorar la inversión y tener una inversión concreta por lo menos, porque si se cumple el 0,55%, pues estaríamos un poquito mejor que hoy. Pero todavía muy lejos de una meta elemental que ha sido desde hace 30 años el leitmotiv nuestro. En la primera misión en la cual yo participé, o la segunda, la de García Márquez, pusimos como meta el 1% del PIB para los 4 años. Estamos hablando del año 94. Es decir, que en el 98 hemos debido alcanzar el 1% del PIB. Y hoy estamos en 0,27, 0,30% del PIB. Por lo menos el plan de desarrollo tuvo la sinceridad de poner una cifra que espero que logren alcanzar. Pero adicionalmente en Colombia hay una posibilidad que son los recursos de regalía, que excepcionalmente por este bienio van a ser importantes. Entonces, si se lograra aglutinar alrededor de un proyecto como este, la opinión o la participación de varios países de la región, México, sin lugar a dudas, países de Centroamérica, República Dominicana, Colombia, Perú, Ecuador, el área andina por lo menos, pues entre todos yo creo que podríamos aportar suficiente para arrancar un proyecto. Y yo creo que una de las cosas que debemos promover y que coincide con la política del actual gobierno en Colombia es que hay que reindustrializar el país. Y un proyecto como este puede dar cabida a la industria local. Nosotros tenemos una industria metalmecánica bastante avanzada en Colombia. Se han construido plantas industriales grandes en el país. Es decir, tenemos capacidad metalmecánica, por lo menos, para para construir partes de un proyecto como este. Y yo creo que es por ahí que hay que buscarlo, tratar de convencer a algunos empresarios de que se entusiasmen con la idea, teniendo en cuenta que no solamente pues, les va a dar trabajo en la etapa de construcción, sino que después en temas como ciencias materiales o medicamentos, industria farmacéutica, lo que hemos oído mencionar hoy abundantemente, va a haber progreso y Colombia al fin se decidió a reactivar la industria de producción de vacunas, que la habíamos paralizado en los años 2000. Hoy pues estamos reactivando una industria farmacéutica fuerte en ese sentido. Un proyecto como este es de una gran utilidad y por lo tanto pues yo creo que hay que pelear para lograrlo, pero hay que conseguir aliados muy concretos en toda la región y tratar de moverse pues a nivel de los gobiernos regionales. El gobierno de México en este momento no sé qué piensa sobre la ciencia, pues el colombiano, Petro lo ha dicho, pero hasta ahora pues el presupuesto de Ciencias es el más bajo de todos, entonces no se ha concretado en hechos ese apoyo. Y esperamos que eso cambie, porque de lo contrario tampoco vamos a ir muy lejos. Yo paro aquí porque la preocupación mía sí es que este es un proyecto que, bueno, no es terriblemente costoso para nada. Se puede comparar con otros proyectos regionales o internacionales, pero sin lugar a dudas es un proyecto que representa una inversión y que requiere, por lo tanto, de un esfuerzo conjunto de varios países. Y lo que debemos buscar es precisamente cómo aglutinar la voluntad de esos países alrededor de un proyecto que tiene muchísimos aspectos positivos. Entonces, creo que vale la pena continuar la lucha, sin duda.
Me gustaría darle la palabra a Hernán, que acaba de inspirarse aparte de esas palabras.
Sí, lo que dice el doctor Lozada, sí, y me parece un punto a favor de la Universidad de Córdoba, porque la Universidad de Córdoba ha tomado como meta desde la Vicerrectoría de Investigación y Extensión lanzar a sus docentes a la región cordobesa, ampliar la extensión en nuestra región, no solo tener los docentes haciendo investigación que terminaba en anaqueles, paper, sino llevar la ciencia como tal a nuestra región, que es lo que se necesita. Y muchas cosas se han generado desde acá, desde la Universidad de Córdoba, para, para el desarrollo sostenible, desde el Departamento de Agronomía, desde el Departamento de Enfermedades Tropicales, el Departamento de Medicina Veterinaria, ¿sí? Y me parece muy importante ese apoyo que nos da el señor rector y la vicerrectoría en estos momentos en la consecución de esas metas.
No sé si Andrea quiera decir algo más para terminar. Ya después de esta sesión que tuvimos toda esta mañana, surgen varios caminos de articulación. Hoy es el inicio de este simposio que va a ir pasando de país en país aquí en la región del Gran Caribe, incluyendo a España, en Valencia. Y la idea es que nos unamos en torno a este simposio y que podamos llegar a construir un documento técnico como el que nos mostró Secasi y hacer, como decía Pierre Curie, el esposo de Madame Curie, hacer de la vida un sueño y de los sueños una realidad y que podamos tener ese Sincrotrón del Gran Caribe para que aquí los estudiantes que nos están viendo algún día puedan trabajar allí. Eso es parte de lo que tenemos que hacer nosotros, ¿no? Trabajar para las siguientes generaciones. Entonces quiero agradecerles a todos los asistentes virtuales y presenciales por habernos acompañado en la sesión colombiana del Sincrotrón para el desarrollo sostenible. Thank you so much. Es todo. Gracias. Chao, chao.